What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we return with John Campbell of Lamb of God. Thank you so much for being here today. Great to talk to you
My
again.
pleasure, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Anytime, anytime. The last time I spoke to you, we were promoting the self-titled album, and now we got Omens coming out very, very soon this October. The first two singles that you released being the title track and the other one being Nevermore. Is this a good representation of what the entirety of Omens will sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think we have another track that's releasing soon that has a little bit of a different flavor in parts of it. And there are songs on there that are, we tend to put out dynamic records and not all just like blazingly fast, beat you over the head kind of stuff. And I think the two singles that have come out give you a taste of how it's going. The third one to be released, I think tomorrow maybe? Or it might be a secret. So oh no, actually we're teasing it already. So yeah, there's another single tomorrow. I think they're good representations of how the record sounds, but it's it's a Lamb of God dynamic record where we cover a lot of bases.
Yeah, well, I've noticed with the last couple of Lamb of God records, like with Sturm und Drang, if I pronounce that correctly, I never expected to hear a song like Embers or Torches or, the clean singing that's incorporated on there. And then you further drew that point home with the Josta and Chuck Billy collaborations. Is it fair to say that Lamb of God has been enjoying experimenting a lot more as you made more and more albums?
Yeah, well, I think we started and developed something that we were cool with, and what we were doing was pushing ourselves to the limit of what we could play, and really just kind of hold on by the skin of our teeth to get through some of these songs in the early days. But we would put out a record and kind of set that flag in the ground, and then we would want to do we want to grow, we want to do better, we want to do something different, and have it be better than the record before. And I think we have managed to stretch out and include new little threads of things that give us that dynamicism, as well as we are purposefully trying to grow, expand, and do new cool stuff.
Does it always start off with a preconceived idea? Do you and Randy and everybody go into the studio with a vision in mind, or is there a lot of rolling the dice and trial and error?
The second one is closer to the truth. Mark and Willie will be writing stuff at home, and then they'll come together with the producer, and they'll have some writing sessions where they kind of move stuff along further, and then we all eventually come in and work the songs the same way. Generally, they're pretty well worked by the time we're all hammering on them. But there are occasions, for instance, on the last record, on the self-titled, the song "Resurrection Man." Josh, the producer, was saying, hey, we need a song that kind of fits this bill and has this, we need one of these kind of monsters on this record. And so he kind of suggested what it might be, and then we sat there and came up with riffs on the spot and wrote the song because we needed that beast. So that does happen occasionally, where there's a vision that we need something. But generally, it's just pieces kind of come together and organically kind of grow and build and become what they become.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you mentioned that with Resurrection Man, because I've always said that is the most haunting introduction to any Lamb of God song I've ever heard. I called it the fairy tale from hell in a way. So it's really funny that you mentioned that. And actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about your bass playing style, because one introduction that really intrigued me was you good there?
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm in frame and everything's cool.
Yep, you're good. But Reality Bath, I thought, was a fantastic bass introduction that really pulled me into the song. As a bassist, I'm sure in the world of rock and roll, we've all heard our fair share of bass player jokes back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
But it's such
they're still telling them. They are still telling them.
Yeah, we'll tell them that Peter Steele and Lemmy got more girls than anybody in rock and roll history. So there you go.
And I'm not worried about any of it. I think it's hilarious. Yeah. It's great just for clever jokes.
Yeah, but being that it has both an emphasis on rhythm and melody, do you prefer to have music before you lay down your parts, or with an introduction like in Reality Bath, or even the basses that I was hearing in a song like the Number 6, for example, it really does stand out? Do you sometimes have a pattern that the band can write according to?
Have you gotten an advanced copy of the record yet?
I have.
Have you gotten all the way through to the last track?
Yeah, I just didn't want to mention any of the
Yeah, no, it's
stuff
cool. It's cool.
because of
No,
legal
that was an
issues.
example of that. But that was there. The music was there. The wheedly guitar parts and Art had a rhythm he was coming up with for that, and then that was just me coming in like, well, what could I do with that? And approach that more as a bass player because most of the time I'm playing guitar on a bass because it is so goddamn fun to play guitar riffs to just riff. And I'm doing that on a bass most of the time. But songs like September Song are more traditional. I approach that as more a traditional bass player and what I did with that song. And I think it's cool as shit. I really like it.
Because I see like the way that groove is incorporated in here. I mean, you could take like I keep circling back to Reality Bath because that may be in my top 5 Lamb of God songs ever, and I think the lyrics coming out in 2020, the new Abnormal, made a little too much sense in 2020. But
Yeah.
but like, is there other jazz techniques? Like, I see some jazz techniques in your bass, but I'm not a bassist, so maybe I'm misinterpreting that. But like, is there other techniques outside of metal that you reference?
No, because I don't know any of those techniques. I'm completely self-taught. And it's just like, okay, what do I need to do here? Which I guess might hold me back in some situations, but I don't feel like there's a. I don't have to like, okay, well, should I use the jazz technique here with this particular mode, and maybe they'll do the odd time signature that'll finally. I'm not approaching the music like that. It's much more visceral, and about crafting a song. And as far as jazz techniques, I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest.
I just feel like if you took the introduction to Reality Bath, you put saxophone or trumpet over that, I could see it happening.
Worked for Hall and Oates, man.
Yeah, it does, and there are plenty of Lamb of God songs that could be transcribed on the keys that work very well. So
that would be awesome.
Do you prefer to write parts when you're in the company of your other bandmates, or isolation being such a great fuel for creativity, you prefer to be alone in your own element when it comes to thinking of new ideas?
When I'm doing that, I definitely am alone by myself and spend a lot of time just doing stupid melodies that, I just get something stuck in my head and just and occasionally something like that will make its way to the band. But I would certainly, it's not very often that we write in the moment as things happen, like Resurrection Man was an instance where that was not what we normally did, but it turned out to be a pretty whip-ass song.
Definitely. Now comes to the anniversary portion of this interview, because there's a couple of anniversaries that I want to talk about. I know that we recently celebrated 15 years of Sacrament, but next year is going to be 20 years of As the Palaces Burn, and to this day, it's a historical moment in metal when we put on and we hear that intense scream that Ruin opened up with. Kind of two questions in one. Can you see maybe a celebration of that album in a way? And kind of what was the thought process back then, coming straight from New American Gospel to then? And how would you say the songwriting has sort of like evolved since As the Palaces Burn?
Yeah, as far as the anniversary of that, these are just mile markers that more often than not, the marketing department and record labels want to celebrate. It's crazy for me to look back. Holy shit, that was how long ago? Fuck. Yes, I mean we will certainly take a moment to applaud that as the date comes around. If we play a show, maybe we'll do something special. And as far as how the songwriting has changed since those early days, I would say it was a lot more collaborative at that point, in that we would have a part. Someone would bring in a part, and we would all learn the part, and then we would sit there and play the part over and over again until it was just drilled into everybody's head, and then add parts to that, or however that's going to go. And that was also before it was easy to have like a home recording studio where you could just have your laptop and plug your guitar in and start tracking. So that has definitely changed our approach in writing. We can definitely send stuff around and be able to listen to it in our own time to kind of work out extra stuff that we're going to do, or whatever we might want to do. But as far as like with the goal of the writing, that's remained the same, which is just from the beginning, we just wanted to be a metal band that would show up you would watch, your jaw would hit the floor, and that all the songs we played blazingly fast and tight, uh, and that's kind of still been the focus.
And it's funny too because like I see a constant evolution. Like when you compare the evolution from a New American Gospel to As the Palaces Burn to Ashes of the Wake, you almost see kind of like you almost hear it maybe as you mentioned in the production as well. But I thought with a New American Gospel, Lamb of God's punk rock roots was shining through there the most, and it kind of got more and more metal over time.
Sure. No, I think that we do evolve, and that our records tell the story of that, and that's kind of, I guess, in a way, sort of the point of making the records for us, is that it just kind of like, okay, this is who and what we are at this moment. So here's a record's worth of songs, and then we've been lucky enough to do that a few times, and we go play a show now, and it's like, crap, what songs are we going to play? Because we only have so much time, but there's a bunch of songs that people want to hear.
Yeah. And this year marks 10 years of Resolution, which is a sentimental album for me because that was the first album cycle I saw Lamb of God on. And with Desolation and the number 6 and To the End, I think they're just as classic as a track like Walk With Me in Hell. Do you mind if I ask like what the mindset was coming into that? Because I feel like that was a very long gap between Wrath and there as well. So there was like a pretty big gap.
Oh wow, you're asking me to rewind and try and think about what had happened there. Shit, I couldn't tell you why there was that length there. I remember we knocked out a bunch of records. It felt like really quick, and we just, for whatever reason, we were touring, and we would either be touring or writing, and we never blended the two, and so that definitely had an effect on when records were coming out, when we needed time off to go write and record a record. Now we've kind of blended those worlds a little bit in that we can kind of do both, not at the same time, but concurrently, more or less. So yeah, I think that has been a big change.
When you play like one of your most aggressive songs, like Set to Fail, for example, versus like a slower song off of Sturm und Drang, more melodic, like Torches or something like that, is it almost like a completely different energy that you're channeling into playing that song, depending on the level of heaviness, for lack of better terms?
I mean, I guess it is to a degree, but there's still, we're still on stage in front of a bunch of people presenting this which we have worked on for a long time. And it could just be, yeah, you get to the slow song, it's, a bit of a different energy, but I feel like me personally, I'm ready to explode with practically every snare hit. So yeah, I guess when it slows down, you temper it a little bit, and then when it gets a little crazy, just let it loose a little more. But it all comes from the same place, from being very grateful to be where we are, and having had a lot of practice doing this, performing and playing. Yeah, it's just from song to song, there's different energies, but it all comes from the same source.
Definitely. Do you feel like, I've always said that art is life in a way? When you bring it into the world, it is life that grows and develops. Do you think that all of your albums could like evolve over time with you as an artist, like they evolve with you, or do you prefer if every album is representative of a snapshot of who you and the band were at that time in a way?
Generally, it's the snapshot of who we were at that time. But of course, if we're playing these songs, 20 years later, then we're still the ones performing it. Although this kind of what it is has already been set in stone to a degree. But things will change a little bit over time. Sometimes parts will get slower or faster depending on what's happening in the song. So songs still tend to evolve after they come off the studio and we play them live. But they stay within the parameters of what the song is, more or less, and it is a snapshot of who and what we were at the time.
Yeah, given recent events in world history, I feel like some of the songs, like off of Ashes of the Wake, aged pretty well, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, we write angry music about desperate things sometimes, and it seems the world's gotten more angry and more desperate.
Yeah, I think as it gets older, when we tell the stories of the times we're living in, like the way swing music was used to describe World War II, I think Lamb of God is going to describe the. We're going to be hearing
a few other bands. Yeah. No, that'll.
We'll be seeing those in the history documentaries.
God, I hope so. That'd be great.
Yep. And do you find that like when you are playing these songs live and the audience is channeling energy into it and they're interpreting it, does that also bring new meaning to the music or bring new life to it than when you heard it in the studio?
It helps to breathe life into it for the performance, and that's what the performance is all about: is that energy from the band to the crowd, and that coming back, and just this chaos while this lights and music is all going on around. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Because I remember, hearing stories of, Burn the Priest days and, in the punk rock eras, like playing in like, the clubs and whatever. And now, I'm seeing you play at like, places like the Hammerstein Ballroom or the Roseland Ballroom or Coney Island Amphitheater on Friday. Do you almost feel like the experience, a live experience has changed for Lamb of God over the years, depending on the type of venue that you're playing in as well?
Oh yeah, the venue definitely has an effect on it. We just finished a European tour that was mostly festivals, but we played some smaller clubs in Germany, which were like the old days where it's just hot as crap. And when you walk off stage, you're soaked from head to toe. But there's an energy to those shows. It's undeniable. That's fucking great. It's this intimate show, and it's just everyone's hot as shit, sweating, and it just adds an intensity to it, I think. But then when you play in these bigger, like an arena or the ballroom or anything, there's just so many more people, and it's that whole energy thing. It just becomes it's not a different beast, but depending on the venue, the bigger it gets, it can definitely create a more energetic atmosphere.
Yeah.
But we did a Ozfest one year, and we were direct support for, I don't remember if it was Ozzy or Black Sabbath that year, to be honest, but I remember we would play, and sometimes there wouldn't be a pit in the front, it'd be all seats, and there'd be like some old dude stuffing nachos in his face waiting to see Ozzy Osbourne while we're up there pouring our hearts out. And that actually can be beneficial, because then I kind of like, oh, I'm going to make you guys like me, or I'm going to make you hate me. And then start focusing energy on these people.
Yeah, you should have asked him. I should have asked him if he brought enough nachos for everybody.
Yeah. Well, give me those nachos probably cost $15.
I was at Rammstein yesterday, and a hot dog was 13. So yeah, it was
fucking hell.
Yeah, it was worth it though. They had the ballpark franks and everything, and
right on.
and the pyro from Rammstein helped heat it up a little bit more. So, kind of like I remember we talked about this last year. The differences are in 2020. The differences between punk rock and hardcore, and how like Lamb of God has had sort of like affiliations with both. Do you feel that punk rock is still prevalent in all of Lamb of God's music even today? Because I still think it has all, despite it being more metal, it still has all the fuck you attitude that punk rock is.
Yes, I think that's part of the magic of Lamb of God, is that fuck you of punk rock, and Randy and I were both steeped in punk rock coming up at a time when metal and punk rock were at odds with each other. And I think that's kind of part of what Randy and I bring to the band is this punk rock energy of fuck you.
Have you ever thought about, like, because every time I've seen Lamb of God, it was with a Killswitch Engage or a Slayer or something like that, which is awesome. But can you maybe see Lamb of God bringing out like the Casualties for a tour, or maybe like a more punk rock and oriented band?
Yeah, I don't know if being in the fishbowl is kind of hard to judge these things, but I wonder if we might be considered too mainstream for some of these bands. Like, when I'm Lamb of God, those guys are sellouts on a major label, heavy metal. So maybe some of these people would not be so into it. But I mean, I would love to see that.
Yeah. How dare you guys get played on liquid metal, man?
I mean, to some people these things are important.
Yeah. Well, you still have toured with a variety of different bands. Like, I think playing with Slayer is kind of like a different experience than playing with like a Killswitch Engage, and and then you play with like an Amon Amarth that has a completely different audience. Have you noticed maybe different reactions aside from the nacho story that you told me, which I think is my favorite part of this interview now? But like, have you noticed different reactions depending on the crowds that you've been involved playing with?
Yeah, well, when we play festivals, that's a really good measure for these, because sometimes the festivals are more eclectic and there's a bunch of different types of music, as opposed to being like a heavy metal festival. And those are always fun because there's people that have always heard of us but never seen us. So the people that are in there, like, they're really going hard. And for us, it's fun because these are new people that have never seen us, and we're pretty good at what we do. And these people get a little you can see people enjoying themselves, and that's a lot of fun.
Definitely. And the final question I wanted to ask you is going back to the days of Richmond, Virginia. I was recently privileged to see the Guar documentary, which was one of the best music documentaries I've ever seen. But in the era of, during the cultivation of the Richmond, Virginia scene, was it maybe like a little bit easier to start a band in that time period, in that location? Because it seemed like it was such a tight-knit community and a supportive community.
I think that maybe it was harder too, because everybody's in a fucking band, and Richmond had this what's the word I'm looking for? Shit, I'm blanking on a very easy word. Richmond had this bands would come to play in Richmond, and the Richmond crowds would be like this, and if they started nodding their head to the beat, that meant they actually liked you. They weren't very like appreciative or validating, because most of the people were like, "Oh, I could do that better. Oh, that song's stupid. I could write a better song." So there was a lot of competition with it. So what I think that did for us coming up in that scene was we had to be good, or like, we would immediately be laughed out of the bar by all of our peers within our town. And yeah, that was the scene helps people who are driven and have something to say in Richmond in that sense, but I don't think it made it easier. I think it made it harder because everyone's there judging.
Yeah, I was wondering too. I forgot the name of that warehouse, but the documentary showed like that old abandoned like warehouse that the
milk bottle building.
Yep, that one. Yeah, and were you guys playing in there back in the day, or
no? But we did. So that's a downtown block or two off of Broad Street, and on Broad Street, if you went uptown a little bit, there was it might still be there, a place called Corporate Museum Framing or something. It was a frame shop in one of these old big buildings on Broad Street in Richmond, and we rehearsed with a bunch of other bands in the basement of that building. But this is back before Richmond had its resurgence, and people wanted to start making investments in the properties downtown. So those places don't really exist anymore.
Oh, what a shame. It's the same case here in New York, but you know what? Places close, new ones open, and I think that's the beauty of punk rock. We may get pushed around, but we never get pushed out.
That's true.
Yeah, it's very true. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Great to be able to talk with you again. Is there just anything else you would like to promote for the release of Omens? I'll be seeing you guys for my birthday on September 9th in Coney Island, but is there anything else?
Oh, shit.
Yep.
No, man, just happy birthday to you coming up this Friday.
Thank you.
And, I just really hope people want to come out and have a good time with us. It's a Lamb of God show, man. Let's go.
That's all you need to know. I say I'm going to a Lamb of God show. Like, oh, what kind of band is that? I was like, it's Lamb of God, and that's all you need to know.
Don't worry about it. If you think it's Christian, that's fine. Yeah, sure. It's whatever you think it is.
Well, you call yourself pure American metal. I call it all organic metal.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Lamb of God. Be sure to check out Omens coming out this October. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.